Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join T2 and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
Welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Spencer Locker.
And me, Tracy Roberts.
Hi, Tracy. All right?
Yeah. I'm just confusing people more with my accent because it's like on every session I do, I swear, and most of you guys will probably wonder this as well. It's like, is she Scottish? Is she from Lancashire? Or I don't know. I can't really make my mind up. So I just thought I'd throw a bit of an accent in there just for a change. Hiya.
Wavy Davy. Right, okay, good stuff. So we're in the Hubcast suite.
We are.
We're you know what?
Loosely termed.
We've been bouncing around the country for quite some time now.
Mm.
When I'm sort of driving around, I'm very much a music sort of guy.
Okay.
I like to listen to my music.
Me too, yeah.
I like to listen to my fat tunes.
Fat tunes.
Tunes.
Big fat beats.
Spelled CHOOOONZ.
Wow.
Fat tunes. But to be honest with you, because we've been spending so much time on the road, I've been leaning towards podcasts.
Okay.
So I've been checking out some really nice podcasts and I've been disappointed with some. I've got to say, there's some people.
They weren't mine, were they?
No. It wasn't T2 content at all. But there were some people who I like reading their books, but I don't like listening to the podcasts.
Or vice versa.
And vice versa. Yeah. Sometimes I love listening to people. There's a guy who I absolutely love to watch, but I can't read his books because they're turgid. Have you ever heard that word, turgid?
No.
I might have made it up. I don't know, but it was really hard work. But anyway, so I was going down the M1 the other day in particularly heavy rain and decided to access the T2 podcasts. And I actually had to listen to your podcast that you did with Lydia.
Our Lids.
Lydia, yeah. On quiet quitting.
Literally forced her in here. And I was like, sit down and listen to me. She loved it, really.
Shutting her fingers in the door. Let go of the door for him. Yes, really good, really interesting. It made me think. It really did. It made me think. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great to just sort of carry that on a little bit? Maybe get a little bit of a bit of a different context, maybe explore it a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so Tracy Roberts, quiet quitting, go.
Well, we spoke about quiet quitting and we went into loads of detail about what that meant because people recognise it as it's been worded in lots of different ways. But we looked at actually how it was very, very similar to industrial action in the farthest extent. In the nearest extent, it was people just realising from their own mental health perspective, what is the point in putting any extra work in when nothing gets recognised? So we sort of explored, the reasons why people might do that. And what was interesting about it was I read loads of articles following that because it still is a trending sort of conversation. And what I loved about it was the more I read into it, I thought, okay, there's loads of reasons why people end up quiet quitting. One of which we talk about all the time, toxicity levels, mental health. Sometimes it's that lack of, exposure, acknowledgement in a business.
Acknowledgement, appreciation, you mean? About what? Not necessarily I feel underappreciated, but nobody actually acknowledges my contributions.
Yeah, and if there's bias in the business, that's a big part of that. Like some people get all the credit and others don't. And then the other aspect of it is it can be personal for people. So for a lot of people, they'll quiet quit. And I did argue that actually it's not the right approach, but they'll quiet quit because they just feel like their lives are so much in work that when they get home, it affects their work, their home life, and then their partners say things to them like, hey, listen, hello, I'm here. And have you seen your children this week? So there's a million different reasons why people did it. And what Lydia and I spoke about was, isn't it a shame that actually businesses don't recognize the early signs of this almost coming on, because then actually we can get in front of it and actually say, look, let's find a better balance for you, because it's sad to think of people being forced into a situation where they're doing the bare minimum for their own reasons personally and not feeling fulfilled, or from the business perspective when actually we could do something about it. So for me, if you're a good leader, you're looking for those signs because it is directly linked to toxicity levels somewhere. Okay. But what was interesting about this, and I like, the more we thought about it, we thought actually there's another aspect to this. So the other side of it is quiet firing.
Okay. Come at me with that again.
Okay, so we're saying people quite quit. Okay?
Yeah.
And one of the things me and Lydia landed on was, we could probably stop this happening. And, it's a big part of the business's opportunity to kind of like be speaking to their people and understanding them and all the rest of it. But then we stumbled across a reason that might cause the quiet quitting or actually be part of the problem here, which is quiet firing. Now, what I mean by that is it's completely the opposite way around. So this is not necessarily led by the individual. This is led by the organization.
Right. Okay.
So for a lot of people that are in a work scenario, we hear a lot about the hustle culture, don't we? Hustle. And it's like, if we're not working hard or we're not seen to do everything a little bit extra, stay late, come in early, work at weekends, do stuff for free, turn down our family time because this bit's really important in the business, then actually some of our organizations start to question that, particularly fast moving organizations, because they go, hang on a minute, particularly if you've got leaders who are very much doers and maybe not as tuned into the individuals in the organization. They go, hang on a minute, I'm tuning in on this person, not really going above and beyond. Now, I'm not saying they're not doing the job, because they are, but they're going, why does that person put their jacket on at 5 p.m. every night? Why don't they want to take on that extra project? Now, they're not thinking about all those other reasons that we've just mentioned. They're just thinking, my business needs this person to literally be a trailblazer, and they're not doing it. So what do? They decide that person does not fit the culture. And instead of dealing with it and asking the questions, they start to manage them out, hence the quiet firing. Okay?
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So, and I've been in an organization where this has happened a lot, actually. And we do talk to organizations all the time. You do too, where, and I think this is poor performance management and performance development. However, let's just look at what that means. It means that person will not receive as much feedback as someone else.
Yeah.
Because they'll just go, screw you. I'm not gonna encourage you.
Yeah.
I won't give you praise.
Right.
Others will get praise and you will see that, but I'm not going to give you praise. Okay?
Right. So straight away, this is starting to sound like, rather than being an abusive relationship, it's a neglectful relationship.
Yeah. I guess part of this process here is you're not actually doing anything wrong, technically. However, I'm not getting the stars and stripes and the flashy lights off you. So therefore, I'm going to let you know that, but I'm not going to be direct about it. Because if I actually said it in a review that I feel like you're not giving me an extra 10%, that's not actually really a valid thing to say because I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
But because I don't fit what you think needs to be me in this role, then I'm just going to make you feel bad about that. So I'm not going to give you praise. I'm going to cancel you one-to-one sometimes and make you feel like you're not important.
Yeah.
And for those of us who really lean into that, we're definitely two people like that. Part of our love language is just having that contact with, a bit of affirmation from time to time. So it's going to destroy you as an individual. Going to disengage with you. So you might see me walk past you at work and not really ask you questions. I'm not going to ask for your input on anything. I'm definitely not going to get you involved in any cool projects. I'm going to leave you working within, I guess, what is classed as your day-to-day job.
Yeah.
Sometimes the mundane tasks as well. Even if I know you're really, really creative, I'm going to stop you getting those projects because I know it's going to chip away at you. And I'm going to take you out of communication loops because I know I'm basically cutting off your oxygen by doing one of those things, let alone 4 or 5 of those things. Okay.
Yeah.
What that ends up doing is making that person disconnect even more. And it's almost like trying to force them out. Some people will be instantaneously forced out by that. And other people will cling on for dear life, quite quitting even worse. And then what happens there is we get to a very desperate situation where we're looking for any little thing to get rid of that person. And I'm just going to call it out. It does happen. Okay. Yeah. I've had organizations that I've worked with say to me, this person here just, isn't giving us what we want. Like technically they're giving us this, but when we see this behavior coming out from time, what do? We need to performance manage them. And I think, well, part of the conversation I have with them and the HR professional is, well, technically they're not doing anything wrong. So then it becomes fictitious sometimes, or we make a mountain out of a molehill, and it is like gaslighting, really, isn't it? But the reality is that we're getting rid of that person, but we're being very underhand about it, or we're making their life so miserable that they leave. And for me, isn't that sad?
Yeah, very much so, isn't it? Isn't it linked very much to the podcast we did recently about
toxicity levels?
Yeah.
It definitely is. And I just think about how that destroys a human. You know, it's not humane, you know. And the reality is, if say you're joining a business that is a hustle culture, right? So fast moving organizations, people who are innovative and stuff like that. If we've been given the boundaries at the beginning of and the expectations of this is what's expected, and we still choose to join that business, then even by having regular one-to-ones, we should know that we're probably not picking up the same speed as other people. And actually, if we're consistently doing that and doing it in a kind manner, then actually that person's probably going to realize at some point that actually I love the environment, but I don't like the job, or vice versa. So actually on both terms, you'll probably realize at some point and you'll move on. However, if you're getting no feedback that's tangible to the outcomes, or, you know, such like, then it does become a sort of fact that you don't really understand that that's required of you.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would. Yeah. It's difficult. Oh, the fans are here. They're bringing in coach loads of people to wave and say hello to us as we
we totally did not time this podcast right. It was a cohort heading out there, but they looked happy. So that's good.
Hey, you know what? Every day's a good day above ground. So yeah, I agree totally what you're saying. I do, and it's as simple as it is complicated, because we're looking at messing with people's heads, and wouldn't it be great if we could make people feel valued and included and things like that, and have that capacity to feedback and sort of say, right, okay, you know what, this stuff you're doing here, really like. Now I want to talk about this stuff, and I see it like this. How do you see this?
Yeah.
And
And
I mean,
establishing
what's the
it.
problem with that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we talk about this all the time. We talk to clients and delegates about this all the time, and it seems so simple to us. But sometimes we see these people with this, like, you're right, you're absolutely right. But doesn't everybody think like that? Well, no, actually, they don't.
No, because we all think completely. And that's the thing about boundary setting from the beginning. Like from a business's perspective, you know, even if things change, you could have been in the business 5 years, but things are changing.
Yeah.
You need to go back in and reset those expectations and boundaries. And then if you're not having the one-to-ones, how does this person even bloody know what's going on? They're just feeling really crap about themselves. And that is no way to treat someone. So for me, this is about expectations and boundaries. And it's about having a really good, I'm going to call it performance development, because I hate the term performance management. It makes it sound negative. So, you know, how is this person feeling? You know, how are they performing? It might be that they don't have the tools to move as fast as they want to move. They might have moved into heart surgery mode just to get things right. And actually, how can we pace that and make that better? But this comes from the other term that I was going to mention, which is actually fat firing.
Say that again.
Fat firing. So what this means is,
as in PHAT.
No,
fat.
it's FAT.
All right,
the fat comes from an abundant nest egg. That's what it means.
Yeah.
And it actually means financial independence, retire early. Okay. So this is definitely people who are totally embracing the hustle culture. They are all about the hustle culture.
Right.
So they're driving you know, their work levels to a crazy level, because they're aiming to retire really early. And that's been driven by probably seeing their parents having to work longer hours, hustle for less money than really they should be worth, and actually having the retirement age obviously being bumped up. So what happens is they'll look at that and they'll say, hey, listen, I'm willing to go not just above and beyond, but to infinity and beyond, because what I'm trying to do is work my ass off to be able to then say, hey, I'm aiming to earn a certain amount of money, probably, you know, a couple of million quid, to actually be able to retire early and enjoy my life. It's just another way of seeing the world. I'll bust my ass. And what you tend to find with those guys is they end up working for big tech firms, very innovative, fast moving, law firms, startups. They might even end up like investing in stock or crypto and things like that. And that then is super fast hustle culture. So then obviously if you've got them working in your business, that's who you're being measured against. And that's, you know, as a business, we've got to think about that. So we're going to have people like that. They want to get rich quick. They want to be able to put the time and effort in while they can, but then enjoy the fruits of their labor later. So, I mean, you can look at it from both angles, can't you? You can say, I get it. Like, I totally get the fact that being able to retire at 50 or whatever it might be and just enjoy your life would be fantastic. But the pressure it puts on you from a stress perspective, emotionally, physically, the other side of that is that what happens if something takes a turn for the worst? So you've gone right in and invested everything in one particular aspect of, this sort of fat firing. So you're in one particular, I don't know, sector. Okay.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and then it falls on its ass.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Where
Yeah.
you have to get closer to the mic.
I was too far away from the mic then.
If you've invested everything and it all goes, tits up, then you've got to then somehow get back into a sector.
Yeah.
And for a lot of these people, they're busting their A's, but then they're not actually in a job specifically. So then trying to get back in to a working environment can be really tough.
Yeah.
But then again, there's another aspect to this, isn't there? If you've got people that are aiming for this and that's why they're pushing so hard in a business, then the people who are looking at it from the other perspective of, well, I haven't got that in me, or I don't see the world that way, then how does a business get a happy medium? How do they manage that? So I guess really the point here is we're trying to aim for something right in the middle, aren't we? We want people who are driven. They want to go the extra mile. And sometimes you're not going to be able to remove that from a human, because we know from human behavior, some people are going to be fat firing people. It's all about the here and now. It's about busting their bodies and their minds to within 1 inch of their lives, because they're thinking, of what the long-term goal is.
Yeah.
That has its problems.
Yes.
And these are the people who burn out, right? Not always, but a lot of the time these people burn out. Also, they're taking themselves out of the general, I don't know, running, way of the world, in terms of working environments.
Yeah.
The opposite is, where people are quite quitting because they're struggling with life and the pace of life is just too fast, or they feel like they've been fat firing and end up at the other end of the spectrum because something happens.
Yeah.
So it's interesting just looking at this as almost a bit of a barometer, really, isn't it? How do we as an organization manage those things? How do we grow a set of balls and stop quiet firing, quite frankly?
Yeah.
Because if that is your way of doing things, it's lazy and it's not very fair.
Yeah, it's lazy. It's not very fair. And are you truly being your authentic self?
Absolutely.
Because I don't know anybody in their authentic self who would act like that. So I would suspect they're in shadow. Don't get me wrong. They're probably in shadow as a result of somebody triggering them. And that person might be the person who's doing that. And
it's looking at it, as we always, educate people on, from all angles. Like, so if you're at this end of the spectrum and you're a fat firer, right, and that's what you want to do, you go for it. Like, if that's what you want to do, but don't compare individuals as equals and say, well, if this person can do this thing and you can't, then I'm going to treat you differently, because the reality is every individual is different. They've all got a set of motivators that's separate to them. They've all got tolerance levels that are separate to them. And the reality is that, I guess what we're saying here is there is a happy medium there somewhere, isn't there? And it depends on the role, depends on the environment. But if we've got development systems in place and we're having great conversations with people, we can hopefully slow down some of the quiet quitters, or at least deal with that differently before we end up quiet firing someone. And from a fat firing perspective, if we've got people in the business that are doing that, a lot of businesses would look at that and say, great, they're taking a load of the pressure, they're doing all the stuff that needs doing, but there is a problem there in the sense they might burn out or something might happen. And if you're someone who is fat firing, go for it if that's what you want to do, but just consider your options, because the reality is that it does take its toll. And if something does take a turn for the worse, what do you plan? What sector is it that you're trying to make sure that you have this affinity with still, that you can walk back into a role and have reasonable experience? So how do we do it? How do we get that balance? It's difficult, isn't it?
Very much so. I suppose there's a certain amount of self-awareness going to be going on there.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a certain amount of straight talking. Again, clearly defined boundaries that you mentioned earlier on.
Massive, yeah. And I think, the fact, if you go from this end of the spectrum, the boundaries are way over there for someone else to hear. But I think it's maybe more about being honest, setting the boundaries, but making sure people are in the right roles.
Yeah.
And they've got the right environment to thrive. And as a leader, can you spot what that looks like, that continuum for that person, and see the changes in their behaviors and figure it out early, And for me, it's just remembering that each of your individuals are completely different to each other. And you've got to let them know that as well, because if you are someone who's not feeling appreciated, or you feel you don't give as much as that other person, it could be for a million reasons. Like a great example could be, I leave at 4 p.m. because I have to pick my child up. It's not because I don't give a shit about my job. And if I could stay here till 8 o'clock and do a little bit of extra work and be really, really thanked for that, I'd like nothing more, but I can't. Okay. It could be someone's been at the firing stage, and like I said, they're at the other end of the spectrum because it all went wrong for them. Understand that as a human. And again, just encouraging people to understand that what you expect from them, apart from the non-negotiables of your job, it's not always going to be the same as that person over there. And that's okay. So they shouldn't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
That's so
interesting about the compare and contrast. Because some people, I've been out on the road recently, delivering a lot of day ones to different cohorts from the same organisation, and there's so many people who sort of turned up at the beginning of the day one and sort of went, well, it is what it is,
Yeah.
I've been told to come here, and well, I'm sure it's going to be good. I've heard some good things, but well, we'll see, won't we?
Yeah.
And they've got that skepticism, which I quite like.
Yeah, I quite
like a little bit of skepticism, because it sort of gives you something to push on.
Yeah.
Without it being cynical.
Yeah.
Cynical's when, no matter what you do, it's not going to affect me.
Yeah.
Skeptical is people sort of going, go on then, impress me.
Yeah.
Go on. And you've got that pushback. But you've got so many people who will... it's incredible. You sit down with a bunch of people and say to them, I bet you can justify every single decision and action you've ever made.
100%. Yeah,
because
that's you.
Yeah, that's who you are.
Yeah.
But you need to challenge that, don't you? And you need to sort of look at this person and go, well, you know what? If that was me, I would do this, 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 and this, and that wouldn't be a problem. But that's not you. It's them. And they're different. Yeah. And again, you know what? There's probably a lot of value they can get out of you. You can do a bit of coaching, a bit of mentoring, and all this, that, and the other. But if it's not you, don't expect them to be you.
No,
because when you start making them trying to be you, then you're going to stop them from being authentic.
And that's a really great point, because I don't think anyone would want to admit this out loud, but a lot of leaders employ people that they think are like them.
Yeah.
And actually, it can be a big mistake because you don't get that spread of different abilities, the way you see the world, and all the rest of it. Therefore, you're probably more likely to be a leader that will head this way, because you're not like me, you're not doing what I want you to do
in the way I want you to do it.
So you've got to lead by example, and that leading by example is to say, hey, listen, this is the way I do things, and we're going to have a great relationship because I see you and I hear you. However, just because I stay late, and just because this person does that, or just because that one leaves to pick up the child, that doesn't matter. We're all doing a great job. My argument in a lot of ways is that, hey, listen, sometimes you're a busy fool for a start. You're just doing all the things to be seen. But the other aspect is, I know people who could do their job in 3 hours. They could literally take the 8-hour day and go, I can do that in 3 hours. And I could basically go down the pub for the other 4. And I could still get my job done to its best, extent. I wouldn't be stressed, and that would be me. I know other people who like to pace themselves, take loads of breaks, and actually might work a little bit longer. And that works for them. So it's all down to productivity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you expect a little bit more from someone, then you've got to be clear on that. And essentially, I hate to say this, but from a HR perspective, if they're doing the job, they're doing the job. So if your expectations are that you want all the bells and whistles, then you should have set those boundaries from the beginning as a bit of an understanding piece.
And we do talk about this, don't we? We talk about where we can link it to challenge state language. We can link it to mindset. We can link it to all sorts of stuff. But if people understand what is expected of them, what do I need to achieve, and how am I going to do it? They're in a better place because they've got the capacity to step up, step out, exceed expectations, as long as they've got that clarity. If they don't know what they've got to do or how they've got to do it, well, you know what? It's like people have got something removed, and it's like, well,
yeah.
Okay.
What's it, the Daniel Pink? I think I spoke to you about this the other week. Autonomy, mastery, purpose.
Yeah.
So that, all the research states it's not just about financials. It's, have you got a say in what goes on, and can you make decisions? Can you get better at stuff and know how to stretch yourself? And are you directly anchored to your purpose or the purpose of the business? Or hopefully there's a little bit of a link there.
Yeah.
And if you can get that right, then this balance will never be in question, really. But I think it's important to remember that we've got to look at it from all angles. And this is just sort of one part of a big discussion around, I guess, really what we're saying here is open communication in a business, boundary setting. And if we want to keep good people, we all know how much it costs us, not just financially, but in time and stress and emotions to replace good people.
Yeah.
So we need to look at this, don't we? We need to think about what we can do to affect this, because essentially we want to keep the right people doing the right jobs.
Yeah.
And we want to help them grow as an individual.
Certainly do. Tracy Roberts, thank you very much.
No,
really
thank you.
Interesting. No,
Thank you.
No, thank you. It's really interesting talking with you this afternoon. So, I hope everybody's got something out of that. I'm pretty sure they will have done.
I hope so.
But that's it for the end of this T2 Hubcast. We will see you again on the next T2 Hubcast. So until then, bye-bye.
Laters.
Bye.